So how much do you know about Coatesville? Like most civilizations, Coatesville began near a water source, the Brandywine River. In fact, you could say there wouldn't be a Coatesville if it wasn't for this river. Now, this used to be the home of the Lenni Lenape Indians for thousands of years. One day, a Quaker from England by the name of William Penn, he named this place Pennsylvania in honor of his father. He got along well with the Indians, and you could say that they were the real first settlers of Coatesville. But where did Coatesville get its name from? There's a guy named Moses Coates. Here's his signature. We have no picture or painting, but we do know that he invented an early apple peeler and the first post office in Coatesville. He was friends with George Washington and even Thomas Jefferson. Isn't it time that you know a little bit about your own town? History is about perspective, and in this documentary, we're going to try to challenge your perspective on what you call home. So let's say if we were flying above Coatesville in a helicopter, what might we see? Maybe the hospital at the top of the hill? What if we came into town on a train, like in the old days? Did you know Coatesville had over 3 bridges? And it used to be called Bridgetown at one point. And because of Coatesville's location, halfway between Philadelphia and Lancaster, it was even called Midway. But speaking of names, there's one name that really stands out in Coatesville history. If you want to know about the history of Coatesville, you've got to start with steel. What better place than Lucan's? Founded in 1810 by the Quaker Isaac Pennock, it operated until 1997. Definitely the most famous company in the history of Coatesville. But check out this movie from the 50s, it's pretty funny.
This is Coatesville, Pennsylvania, 38 miles west of Philadelphia. Population, 20,000. Early morning, looking out over this valley and still sleeping town, it looks like any American town. But Coatesville is a steel town, the home of Lucan Steel Company. Here since 1810, the townsmen have made iron and steel and run the shops and mills. They rolled the first boiler plate in America, and today they run the world's largest plate mill.
Really, the Brandywine River is the reason for all this steel. Because of the natural flow of the water, it was able to power the mills along the river. These mills would provide flour, textiles, gunpowder, and really, of course, iron. Iron certainly developed over the years, from farm tools and kitchen utensils in the 1800s to specialty plates made even today. In fact, Lucan steel can be found all over the world. Take the Benjamin Franklin Bridge in Philadelphia, the icebreaker the Manhattan, and even the steel columns at the base of the World Trade Center. They were actually one of the few things left standing after the terrible tragedy in 2001. Having a great natural resource like the Brandywine is one thing, but in order for a business to strive for over 180 years, there's got to be great leadership. The success of the company can actually be traced back to one person, Rebecca Webb Pennock Lukens. She was born on January 6, 1794, the daughter of Isaac Pennock and Martha Webb Pennock. The Webbs actually were some of the first settlers in Pennsylvania in the 1680s. When Rebecca was 19 years old, at the Fallowfield Meeting House, she married Dr. Charles Lukens, and together they took over the ironworks from her father and had a pretty successful business. But this was the 19th century, and personal tragedy soon struck.
I lost my dear and excellent husband, and then commenced my hard and weary struggle with life. Dr. Lukens had just commenced the boilerplate business, and he was sanguine in his hopes for success. He wished me to continue, and I promised to comply. Mother said it would be folly for me to remain, though she thought as a female I was not fit to carry on such a concern.
She was 34 years old and was expecting her second child. She just lost her husband. She promised him that she would take over the mill and do the best that she could.
One of the things you could see in the way Rebecca Lukens handled her business affairs is that she saw a kind of that of God in all the people who worked around her, and saw her work as part of a larger vision of using the resources of the world well. And among the resources of the world were her workers. When it became difficult to maintain them, she figured out ways to maintain them and figured out ways to continue a relationship of respect between herself and her workers.
The company succeeded under Rebecca Lukens, and it became the longest continuously running mill in the country. In 1859, the company was named after her in her honor. But there is more to Coatesville than just steel. Coatesville has been the home to many famous people.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, America's national entertainer. Let's put one all together now for William F. Cody, Buffalo Bill!
William Frederick Cody, also known as Buffalo Bill. At that time, in the 1890s, Buffalo Bill was one of the most famous people in the world. He would spend his winters in Coatesville with his cast, his crew, and his many animals. Because of his celebrity, Buffalo Bill would bring in the most famous of stars through the city. Stars like Annie Oakley, one of the world's finest sharpshooters, and Sitting Bull, the famous Sioux chief. The 15th President of the United States, James Buchanan, owned a home just outside of Coatesville. Now, he's easy to remember because he's the guy before Lincoln, and he also thought he'd be reincarnated as a frog. Coatesville's have many famous people, but did you know it had a famous building?
The house was a private home, and as you can see, it was designed to be a residence. It has library, main hall, music room, staircase, dining room. This building was built in 1889 as a private residence by Mr. Abram Francis Houston. Mr. Houston was a grandson of Coatesville's famous Rebecca Lukens, and he went to a distinguished firm of Philadelphia architects, Cope & Stewardson. They created a style known as the American Collegiate Gothic style of architecture. Cope & Stewardson went on to design buildings for the University of Pennsylvania, for Princeton, and a great many other schools and architects followed their example with this American Collegiate Gothic style of architecture. We have a little over 2 acres or so around the property, which we understand in Mr. Houston's time was quite a showplace. We in particular call your attention to the wonderful tree just beyond the windows, which is a weeping beech, about 100 years old, and it has reached enormous proportions. We have to trim it back from the road every now and again. We are a nonprofit historic preservation organization, originally formed to help the city with the restoration of this building. And we took our name from it. Mr. Houston called the house Greystone, and so we became the Greystone Society.
A lot has changed in Coatesville over the years, but in many ways it is still the same city that it became in 1915. Just look around. Today, as the city stands at the horizon of a new century, she looks forward to what the future may bring. Will you be a part of it?